people have been displaced already. My goodness. What happened to our humanity? And these are unprecedented times because of the future. What does the future hold? You know, we're in touch with some of the families in Gaza. We hope they survive. And I say this, I'm serious. I hope they survive. This is our number one hope. But if they survive, where will they live? Their homes are destroyed. Can we guarantee that anybody will be able to convince Ben Gvir or smoochers who are now making the calls to bring humanitarian? I mean, we're not able to convince them to bring humanitarian aid and food to Gaza. Are we sure they will let us bring concrete to rebuild Gaza? So you see, nothing looks promising. And I think of the leadership in this country. In November, we will be praying for you, for what's coming. Because if this is the kind of leadership the United States is offering to the world, this explains why we are in such very, very difficult times. But I come here also to say that this is a kairos moment for the church. Crises always create opportunities. And right now, this is a kairos moment for the church. And as I will argue, it's precisely our credibility as Christians that is at stake. In December, I declared Gaza has become the moral compass of our world. And I strongly believe this now. Gaza has divided the world. And we need to know where you stand. We need to know where you stand from the killing of more than 15,000 children. We need to know where you stand from the displacement of 2 million people. Gaza is a moral and ethical cause for our world today, and I'm glad that it divided the world because we need to know where you stand. And when I say it's a kairos moment, it's not just a kairos moment for the church, it's for all of us, for our humanity. And actually it is now, when I say it's an opportunity, a kairos moment, this is where we more than ever need to work of people of different faiths together. We cannot afford to work separately. Because now, if it is indeed a moral and ethical case, then it should bring us together. But if I talk more to the church, and I'm not of the habit of addressing people of other faiths. In other words, I don't want to tell Muslims what to do or Jews what to do. I'm a Christian leader. I'm going to speak mainly to Christians. My friend Daniel Bannoura has said that Gaza has created a theological crisis for the church. And all you need to know to accept this is to look at how churches responded to the genocide in Gaza. And I have the daunting task. I'm writing a book on this. And one of the most difficult things to do was collect church statements and listen to what church leaders said about Gaza. As a Christian, I'm ashamed. I'm horrified. I mean, you have those from the evangelical circles who openly called for this genocide. I'm not saying they supported it or endorsed it. I say they openly called for it. Pastors, theologians, congressmen who come from a Christian tradition. I mean, you have a congressman who was a pastor before he became a congressman, studied at 2 prestigious evangelical seminaries, who suggested that we nuke Gaza. I mean, what Jesus is he reading? I'm serious. You have a whole community. I'm looking at, I don't know if they changed it, but they put it online, the proposed draft for the Southern Baptist Convention resolution. How many of you have seen it? They have 2 pages on Gaza. They mention nothing, 0, of Palestinians killed in the war. The whole resolution is on October 7. Defending Israel's right, defending Israel. They say nothing about Palestinians. You read it and you think no Palestinian is killed in this war. I mean, what racism do you have in order to write a statement about October 7th and not mention the 15,000 children killed? I don't want to talk about, let's just talk about the children. And at least pretend that you care. You know, you can fake that you care. You can say, we're concerned about the high number of casualties. Just say that. They didn't even pretend they care about Palestinians killed. I'm shocked. And this is a Christian convention. You have those who justified the war, called it a just war. I've seen how the just war theory was used to defend what's happening, not to defend, but to justify what's happening in Gaza. The same way, by the way, the same people used the just war theory for the Second Gulf War, which, by the way, contributed to almost ending the Christian presence in the Middle East. And the tragedy when we do so is that we make the killing of 15,000 children the justice of God. This is what's happening. You have those who openly and immediately, without thinking, adopted the Zionist narrative. Israel has the right to defend itself. And I'm talking about mainline progressive churches. Talking about our friends who immediately say Israel has the God-given right to defend itself. Totally ignoring the context. Totally ignoring the 16 years of siege, the 76 years of ethnic cleansing and apartheid. By the way, I don't endorse violence. Please, let's get it out of the way so no one misunderstands me. How can you ignore the context when you talk about October 7th? And please help me as a Palestinian understand, how is the colonizer defending itself from the colonized? Please help us understand. Yet we saw one church after the other repeat the same sentiment, basically giving the green light for this genocide. We made calls as Palestinian Christians. We asked the church to repent back as in October, because we saw this coming. And sadly, no one listened. And then there was the silence of the church. A silence that was really very, very loud. Because there was a genocide happening. And what did we hear? Prayers for peace, concern, thoughts and wishes, and in some cases, silence. And the reason I want to emphasize this is because this is not the kind of genocide in which the horrors are discovered after the genocide. You know, we know that there are horrible things happening right now in Sudan. I hope they stop. I hope politicians intervene. I hope we speak about it. With Gaza, everything is happening for all of us to see live. In fact, it's the Israelis themselves who are boasting about it. They're showing pictures of destroying universities and mocking children. And I mean, it's really unbelievable. But as I said, this genocide has been normalized to the extent that we're watching and no longer moved by the images of children pulled from under the rubble. So when I say Gaza, a war of genocide that happened not just under the watch of the church, but under the endorsement and support of many Christian leaders in the West, it truly has created not just a theological crisis for the church. It is about the credibility of our Christian witness if we continue to be silent about what's happening. And I think it's time that we as Christians address Christian Zionism for what it really is. And I'm not just talking about the John Hagee Christian Zionism, friends, okay? Because many times when I speak in progressive circles, when I speak about Christian Zionism, they think, oh, we're talking about John Hagee, but we're better. You know who's the most dangerous Christian Zionist right now? Do you know who it is? It's Joe Biden. He's a Zionist and he's a committed Christian. And he claims that he's proud that he's a Zionist. So we need to address Christian Zionism. And when we address Christian Zionism, we need to address Christian Zionism for what it truly is. Not what you think it is. Not what you felt it. Not the mythical understanding of Christian Zionism that I see in the West. Let's understand what Zionism is and what Christian Zionism is. And you have to see and experience and know what Christian Zionism is through the lens of how we in Palestine experience it. This is not a perspective. This is how we live it. This is our reality. Zionism sought to create a home for the Jewish people in Palestine. It's about creating a home for some people on someone else's land. Plain and simple. Palestine was never empty. My good friend Yusuf Khouri, a theologian from Gaza, said recently, this genocide began with the phrase, a land without people. This is when this genocide began. And it's not just a Zionist slogan, it's a Christian Zionist slogan. So this is what Zionism is, creating a homeland for some people on some other people's land. Please let's not forget that the state of Israel was literally, I mean literally, established on the ruins of the towns and villages of the people of Gaza. This is how Israel was created. They had to destroy Palestinian towns and villages. They kicked out 800,000 Palestinians. You know what it's called? Ethnic cleansing. And please get used to me using strong words, not because I want to, or not because I'm trying to be a bit, aggressive or so on. I'm describing reality. Israeli historians describe it as ethnic cleansing. So this is what Zionism is. They came on someone else's land, colonized it, and ethnically cleansed the people, so they established a land on their land, a homeland on their land. What happened next? They established a state, a Jewish state that is by definition racist and exclusivist. Again, I'm not making aggressive claims. Why? Have you read the nation-state law? The right for self-determination in the state of Israel is exclusive to the Jewish people only. Imagine if this law existed in any other country. Imagine if we say here, the right for self-determination is exclusive to the white Christians only. But this is what Israel said, and no one seems concerned. Everyone is perfectly fine with this. Then comes this government, and what do they say? Only Jews have the right, Jews have an exclusive and unalienable right to the land of Israel. By the way, any Jewish person, they claim. This is Zionism. And they're perfectly fine with pushing Palestinians out, sometimes for the simple reason that we cannot unite with our families, with our spouses. A friend of mine cannot even get his wife a visa to live with him in Bethlehem, so he left the country. But they established a system of discrimination against the Palestinians, a system of Jewish supremacy, and get this, from the river to the sea. The phrase from the river to the sea is controversial, right? I heard in this country. B'Tselem is an Israeli human rights organization. And their report on apartheid in our land concluded with the summary, Israel has created a system of Jewish supremacy, apartheid, from the river to the sea. These are the words of B'Tselem. No one is appalled by that. Western world didn't even care about these reports. We tried to push Human Rights Watch report, Amnesty International, all claiming Israel is apartheid. We've heard from the bishop. I was in that conference too, I spoke there. And the South Africans always tell us, what you have is worse than apartheid. We can smell apartheid from distance. What you have is worse than apartheid. And I can't think but go back to my experience in the World Council of Churches 2 years ago, when we, as Kairos Palestine, in partnership with the South African Anglican Church, tried to push for a resolution to recognize Israel as an apartheid state. We could not even get it discussed on the floor. They're trying to dictate to us Palestinians how we describe our reality. And if the reality fits a certain definition, we cannot use it. Imagine the amount of oppression and dehumanization we've been exercised, that has been inflicted on us. And by the way, as I said recently, I keep saying, when it comes to apartheid, it's not an opinion. I don't ask, Fahid, what is your opinion on apartheid? It's not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of facts. Apartheid has an internationally agreed upon definition. Does the reality match the facts? The definition? Do we really care about the international law? That's the question. Because if we don't, let's get rid of it. That's why, again, I said in Christmas, I don't want anybody from Europe or the United States to lecture us Palestinians on the international law or human rights. They don't apply on us. We're not white. Explain to me how one report after the other calls the reality as apartheid and no one cares. And by the way, who are the countries who are supporting Israel now are the same countries who supported apartheid South Africa. And we think we learned and repented from racism. So this is what Zionism is. Remember what I'm saying? This is what Zionism has created. And then more recently, Zionism is responsible for a genocide. So we need to understand Christian Zionism as more than just bad theology about the end times. No, friends, it's not. It is, but it's much worse than that. Zionism, as we experience it as Palestinian, is colonialism, racism, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and a genocide. And let me ask, can we put the word Christian before all of that? Because this is what Christian Zionism is. So it's time to address Zionism and Christian Zionism for what it is. And by the way, I'm very grateful for the fact that there are increasing Jewish voices that say this does not represent Judaism. My problem is not with Judaism. My problem is with this ideology of Zionism. So let's be very, very clear. It's been 76 years of weaponization of the Bible against us Palestinians. Yet what we're witnessing in this genocide is really horrific. And I go back again to what my friend Yusuf said. This genocide began with the phrase, the land without people. So if we want to move forward, and if we want really to honor the sacrifices of the people of Gaza, and if we really care about the idea of never again, especially never again in our name, in the name of the Bible, I think not just we have to address Zionism and Christian Zionism for what it is, but I think we must begin by having the right understanding of what's happening and by speaking truth. Because I think this is what's missing now. Truth and courage, by the way. The two things that are missing. When I say about truth, friends, we've been trying to solve a conflict for a long time now, whereas in fact we don't have a conflict. There is no conflict in Palestine. There is no Palestinian-Israeli conflict. There are no two entities that are fighting. There is a system of apartheid. There is oppression. That's why I don't want to hear about peace and reconciliation. We need to dismantle the structure of apartheid and injustice that exists in Palestine if we want to imagine a future in which Palestinians and Israelis live together in the land. So let's speak truth. It's not a conflict when someone is stepping with his boot on the neck of the other. We don't have two men fighting. And this is why I'm saying we need courage right now. Courage to speak truth to power. And I can't help but reflect and go back to the Cairo, South Africa document. And by the way, we found so much solidarity and coming together right now with our friends from the South African church who visited us. We've been in touch with them. And as I'm writing my book, I went back and read the Cairo, South Africa document. If you haven't read it, please go and read it after we finish. And in the Cairo, South Africa document, they describe different kinds of theology. One is called state theology. And the definition of state theology applies verbatim on Christian Zionism. The use of the Bible to justify colonialism and the exploitation of the poor and supremacy. Because this is what apartheid theology was. State theology, they called it. But they talk about another kind of theology, which I think is really important. And to be honest, this is what I'm here. They call it church theology. And it's the theology that focuses on peace, on reconciliation, on nonviolence, and ignores the reality of oppression on the ground. It's the theology that dictates on the oppressed how to speak and how to resist, and does nothing but pray for peace. It's a theology I find a lot in many, to be honest, progressive churches and faith leaders in Europe and the United States. A theology that lacks assertiveness, a theology that does not speak truth, a theology that does not call out evil for what it is. They tell us it's not helpful. We were told it's not helpful to call Israel an apartheid state. They literally told us that. And they can hide and disguise behind prayers for peace. Pray for both sides. Let's bring a Palestinian and Israeli who are friends and let them speak. Friends, this is not the time for such diplomacy. I began by saying these are unprecedented times, and unprecedented times demand unprecedented responses and demand that we come together from different faiths to say enough of colonialism, enough of discrimination and apartheid. It's time we speak truth to power and call things by their names. It's time that we address the theological giant of Zionism and Christian Zionism for what it truly is. And it's time to act and mobilize. And I'm tired of the complicity of the church through the lack of courage that I find in many church leaders, who tell us behind closed scenes one thing and in public don't say anything. They want to avoid controversy. They choose comfort. People are dying, people are killed in the name of our Bible. And they choose comfort because they don't want to say anything that might sound controversial, and they have to explain it. Not this time. This is not the time for such neutrality and lack of courage from church leaders, especially when we compare it to the heroic sacrifices of medical aides, nurses, first responders in Gaza. It's time not just that we speak out, it's time that we are organized. You have power. You're in the United States. You have power to reach to your representatives. You have power to demand. I don't want you to send an email. Demand, sit, persist, nag. Something horrible is happening and you can stop it. Organize sit-ins. Support the student movements. I believe that the important, the determining factor, what I'm really looking forward to is not November, but September. Whether the students will have the energy to resume the demonstrations. This is where I have hope. I don't care who wins the elections. As I said, I'll be praying for you. But I have hope in the students who know that it's not about posting something on Facebook. They know that they have to disturb the empire. And this is what we're asking from you. Because as I said, these are unprecedented times. And for faith leaders and for church leaders, please use your pulpits to speak truth, to mobilize, to energize. The pulpit is important, as I have discovered myself this year through one sermon that challenged the world. We can do the same. Imagine if we have a movement of church leaders speaking for Gaza, humanizing the children of Gaza. We need this prophetic witness and prophetic message of the church. And as I said, this is a Kairos moment which gives us an opportunity in the midst of this destruction to help our world imagine a better world. If we come together with courage and conviction. Friends, our world is so desperate for such a voice. Believe me, you cannot imagine how many people reach out to me.
We have at least 29 minutes. So we have all the time, and we don't have a theologian in front of us every day to answer our questions. So we need to agree that when you ask a question, make it short to the point. A good number of times they do a lecture and then a question. Today we're not going to do that. You just ask the question, he will answer. Okay?
The first one to ask.
The first.
It ends with a question mark.
No lecture, only a question.
Well, thank you for this. And my name is Ray Janoush. I have Palestinian origin, and I'm a Christian. I accepted Christ at age 17. I heard all my life, I'm 65, I heard all my life about the conflict. And I questioned God himself. You know what? He was the only one that was not upset with me. Everyone else was upset with me. He is willing to answer. And he has been answered. There's one question. I think I heard it, but I want to clarify it. I heard the priest talk about theology. I want to know if the God of the Bible is responsible for what's going on, because that's what Christians are telling me. And every time I point to the Old Testament and they tell me, Ray, you are not smart enough. Wait until God explains it to you.
We have somebody all the way from Bethlehem to answer your question. I'm glad I'm not the one. Okay?
Is God responsible? God is not the one sending the weapons to Israel, friends. Let's stop blaming God and look in the mirror and blame ourselves as a humanity for the evil that we have done to our world. Can you hear me? Let's, as I said, I mean, we have done so much wrong in our world and somehow we blame God. I can't understand. This is not an earthquake. If it's an earthquake, then yeah, we'll talk. It's not an earthquake. And when it comes to the theology that's behind this, God is not racist. We are. We have made God racist. But God is not racist, so please, stop blaming God and look in the mirror.
Okay. You came first.
What would you like to see in Palestine in 5 years? Give us your vision, okay?
I'm not going to answer this question. I want an end to the war tomorrow. This is all I want to see, nothing. Honestly, I could care less what happens next. There's so much killing. There's so much destruction. Literally, I just received a message from a woman in Gaza begging me, can you do anything? I can't think 5 years from now. And I stopped talking about hope. This war changed so many things in us. I talk about survival now. I want to survive 24 hours. Hope? I don't know.
Okay.
Yes, my name is Arthur Brickland. I'm pastor of church here at Atlanta United Church, and I've followed you for about a year, and so I just thank you for the work that you do. My question is, it's more of a theological question, and I know you've said in some speeches that this is not just a theological debate for us Palestinians. This is something that we're living, and so I don't want to just trivialize this with a theological question, but I am wrestling with many evangelicals, even young black people in my congregation that have been indoctrinated.
That's right.
With this Christian Zionism. And so the question is Romans 11, where Paul deals with, all of Israel shall be saved. And there's this concept of this everlasting covenant that ties Israel to the land. As a theologian, sir, could you speak with him? I know you've probably had many conversations about this with Romans 11 and how that is interpreted within the context of the church having an everlasting covenant. Could you speak to that?
And not only he will answer, but Bishop Norwood and I are local.
Yes.
We will come to you anytime you want.
I want you to come.
خلاص don't need. Yeah. So a short answer. Romans 11 had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with a secular state that is committing a genocide in Gaza today. Let's get that out of the table, please. I'm tired of reading the Bible and jumping immediately to the Jewish people of today and to Israel of the day. I think Jews themselves are tired of us Christians doing this to them, please. Let them have their own interpretation of their own scripture. As long as no one imposes someone else's, their own religion on us. I think, as I said, even Jews are tired from us reading and making them objects in our eschatology. my own personal reading of that passage also has nothing to do with, we make it as if it's speaking about Christian-Jewish relations today or about modern day reality. Again, it has nothing to do. Paul was talking whether his hope for the Jewish people of his time to come to faith in Christ. This is what it was about. This is what Romans. And by the way, the distinction between Jew and Gentile in Romans 11, most likely, and I've written about this, is not ethnic. So we need to stop reading the Bible with ethnocentric lens. He's talking about the faith community. Even when Paul talks about the Gentiles who come and then become part of Israel, he says, before you were without Christ, without God, then you become part of Israel. To him, it's not a matter of ethnicity. Israel is not defined by ethnicity. To Paul, Israel is a faith community. So we need to stop reading the Bible and these passages through ethnocentric lens. And more importantly, we need to stop drawing these straight lines from the Bible until today. I don't know how we do this. Is it by ethnicity? You do this DNA test in this country, right? To determine your DNA. My Palestinian friends, 2 of them did it, and they have between 15 to 20% Jewish DNA in them. So they get 20% of the land? I don't get it. It's a silly argument. DNA should not matter. DNA does not matter how God looks at us, and DNA should not determine how we solve this mess we find ourselves in. So I'm pleading with the church to completely get rid of this theology. It has nothing to do with the modern reality. It has nothing to do with what's happening in our land today.
We have before I publicize these books, they are really dying to know about your books and how to order it. Can you give publicity to what you wrote?
Yes. I wrote 2 books. One that I strongly recommend called The Other Side of the Wall. It's available on Amazon, in Kindle. You can listen to it. You can listen to it in different languages. And it really helps you get into the shoes of Palestinians and our experience behind the wall. It's accessible. I strongly recommend it. If you're bored and have nothing to do in the coming months, get my second book, which is basically my PhD dissertation on the Bible and the land. And for my friend who asked the questions about Romans 11, I write a lot about it. And I hope you understand this. It's really important because I am a Bible scholar and I've written on this topic. My PhD dissertation is on the Promised Land. The book is called From Land to Lands. I think it's to date the most comprehensive work on the Promised Land in the Bible that exists. And it took me years to discover that what I've written there has nothing to do with what's happening in our land today. It's an ethical, moral dilemma that we live in. This is where the problem is. It's our failure to love our neighbors as ourselves. What God says in the Bible about the Israelites, about the Canaanites, about Romans 11, Galatians 3 has absolutely nothing to do with it. The key passages that we have to deal with, love your neighbor as yourselves. The Sermon on the Mountain, this is where we go to the Bible to try to get guidance for what's happening today. But I strongly recommend the other book, The Other Side of the Wall. But it's long.
What was the name of the book?
The Other Side of the Wall. Sorry.
What we're going to do...
From land to lands.
Yeah,
From
Abby
land
is going
to lands.
Abby is going to give publicity for his books when she thank you for coming. One second. This book is written by an Israeli historian by the name of Alan Pappy. Just Google that name and you can hear him. He's the best. He was a Haifa University professor and he gives the 47, 48, 49, and the only sources he uses Israeli and British. Okay, so that's an Israeli, the best book about the first night. Okay, the second one is a British Anglican priest. His name is Colin Chapman, and he takes you from Genesis to Revelation, and really beats the theology of Christian Zionism in their own word, okay? So for all of you, you can Google something like this, or website, www.christianzionism, And it is genius that we're using them. These are evangelical scholars want you to look in, and in that scholarship, you will see how much is bankrupt Christian Zionism. So www.christianzionism.org, and then we are going to provide very soon this book and this book. So we need everyone that is interested to give Abby your name and your cell if you did not receive a letter from her, and then Abby will give it to the Honorable Sarah, and Sarah, we need to do some homework. Okay, the next short question. Okay, remember we are here, Christian, Jews, and Muslims.
I have a question, and my question is, what is your message to the students? And I'm saying that because in America, there's a huge number of students after seeing the genocide in Gaza that are unmasked, unchurched, turning away from that message in the church, or because the imam is not speaking justice. And it can be a lonely place between you and your God when the church is silent. What is your message for students?
Yeah. Kiev? Hi. No, I have it. Many messages to the students. First, thank you. And in South Africa in May, I had the chance of meeting many people who escaped Gaza, this war, and we talked to them. And I asked them, during the time when you were in Gaza, did you listen to us who are fighting for you? And they said, of course. And then they mentioned the students. They said, you can't imagine how much encouraging we feel. So these students actually give courage to the people of Gaza. So it's important because they feel completely abandoned and forgotten by the world, especially the Arab world, by the way. So now when they look at these universities, they get a sense of hope. And my message is what I said. We need you in September. Because if this issue is forgotten, and it can't just be about a ceasefire. It has to be the end of the siege. It has to be about getting humanitarian aid. If this ends, if they don't go back in September to having their voices heard, I don't know where else will we look for moral and integral leadership, honestly. I mean, I wish church leaders, I don't want to talk about other faiths, I wish church leaders were as passionate as these students. So we need them. This is what I want to tell them, that they must persevere. History always teaches us that they are on the right side of history. Somehow they get it. So, and I had the opportunity to speak to some of their gatherings, and I told them precisely that. But I think we must also encourage them to educate themselves. I think they need to know better how to be able to navigate these difficult questions sometimes. And I can't but say we need to be sure we're doing it for the right motives. Because some of the things that are said there are not helpful, anti-Semitic. So we need to make sure they're doing it for the right motive, and that they find the right leadership to guide them as they could. They're doing the right thing, but we need to make sure it's being done properly. Not so that it fails. No, it needs to be happening properly, and you cannot replace one hateful ideology with another hateful ideology. So this is what I would like also to make sure happens with these student movements.
You are a pastor of the Christmas Lutheran Church in Bethlehem. You are the dean of students, academic dean at Bethlehem Bible College, and you are the director of something called Christ at the Checkpoint. I hope some of these people will go attend that conference. My question is this: how can we convince the people in the pew that really working for justice is a spiritual journey? That to me is a tough issue in America. I don't know about Palestine.
The question alone, Fahid, makes me depressed. That we really have to convince people to do this. Read Jesus. This is what I always say. Read Jesus. And by the way, I've been saying this to many people who come and tell me, we've given up on the church. And I say, I don't care if you give up on the church. Don't give up on Jesus. Jesus was very clear. I mean, and Jesus gave simple answers. I love this about the simplicity of Jesus. Summarize faith to us, okay? Give us everything in 2 sentences. And Jesus was, okay, good. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. This is an ethical mandate. Love your neighbor as yourself. And by the way, he didn't get it from, it's in the Hebrew scripture as well. The question then, Jesus, who's your neighbor? And this is where Jesus pushes the boundary. It's not those who look like you. It's not those who are you used to working with. No, it's everybody who is in need of mercy or everybody who does mercy. Read Jesus, read the Beatitudes. And if anything, this war has confirmed to me, and I've said this last Sunday before I came here, and I know sometimes I say controversial things on the pulpit. My church is used to me. We're talking about church unity and the fact that as Christians we are one body, right? And I said, what use is it to have one baptism, one spirit, but you have a theology that calls for my destruction? Can we really claim to be one if we don't have the same understanding of human dignity and justice and mercy? This is why I said Gaza has divided our world. So to those church leaders, I would say it's clear to me that in the teachings of Jesus, the right theology is always the right practice. It's always loving the neighbor. And let me tell I'm sure you ask this question, is it just evangelicals or more than evangelical friends? We're told to read the Bible literally, صح? We're always told, read the Bible how? So let's read the Bible literally, and let's turn the pages to Matthew 25. And let's read it literally. In the day of judgment, God will judge you based on what? Not the right doctrine, not the denomination, not whether you accepted Jesus or raised your hand in a prayer. Nothing is mentioned about this. And it's very clear. Take it literally. Don't rationalize it. Don't try to say this is not what he meant. No, take it at face value. On the day of judgment, we will be judged by how we treated the least of these. Those who are hungry, thirsty, the stranger, the prisoner. And he didn't say send them a postcard. Go and visit them. Act. Do things. And again, this is not a radical Jesus teaching in itself. I spoke a lot this season in Lent from Isaiah 57, I think, or 56, on the true meaning of fasting. When God says, I don't care, you fast and I don't listen. Why? You have not set the prisoners free. You have not released those who are in bondage. You know how it is in English. I know it in Arabic. It's about acting. It's not just about having the right position. It's not about you were on the right side only. It's about what you have done to those who are in bondage. This is the right religiosity. So I urge you, read Jesus. Read Jesus. Are we following Jesus or only, as I heard yesterday, someone said, worshiping Jesus? Are we benefiting from his salvation or are we disciples of Jesus?
So one time the Presbytery asked us to do a presentation, and Sarah and I did it. And one member of the Baptist church, when we start talking about Palestinian justice, he says that's political. So it's a real question in America. Okay, that lady behind you.
Not having a position is a political position. Okay. Yes, remember that.
Thank you so much. I don't know if hearing you, something came to my mind, and that is we live in an empire of fear. This is an empire of fear, and the freedom of speech stops when you talk about Israel. And you know that American public has been used and abused when it comes to criticizing Israel by the use of anti-Semitism, the use of that phrase. You asked in your presentation American leaders to be courageous, but how do you go about that? How do you deconstruct the Republic of fear? You know, you talk about deconstructing apartheid before we seek peace. How can we deconstruct fear in order to become courageous?
Yeah, thank you. I would say ground yourself in truth so that when you speak, you know what you're talking about. And if you are really grounded in truth and in fact, then no one can and should blame you or accuse you of being anti-Semitic. Sometimes people ask me, so how do we guard from this? And I say, are you anti-Semitic? It's like, no. I say, so why are you afraid? Speak, but guard yourself. Ground yourself in truth. To me, it's shameful how the charge of anti-Semitism has been weaponized because it cheapens true anti-Semitism and it makes anything anti-Semitic. And anti-Semitism is real, especially in the West, by the way, you know. What I can't understand is how the response to anti-Semitism is the creation of Zionism and not dealing with it in your own countries. So, no, ground yourself in truth and speak with convictions. And these are not the times in which we can be really afraid. And by the way, whatever you say, you will be accused of anti-Semitism. You know, you will be challenged. Honestly, I'm a man of faith, and I take everything I say seriously. And I guard my heart. I always ask God to sanctify my motives, but I stopped caring what people think. These are not the times in which we speak to please people. We need courage. We need courage those days. And I'm troubled by the fact that very few people are speaking out of this kind of, as you describe it, culture of fear or empire of fear. And by the way, this is why also it's important, and sorry for my Jewish friends to put it this way, that we always partner with these Jewish voices. And I'll never forget what a Jewish friend once told me. He said, Munther, you guys, Christians and these Christians ecumenical circles, you never invite us. You only invite the Zionists. So why are we... So we need to reconsider who are our conversation partner in this Christian-Jewish dialogue. And by the way, they're more than happy to help us and guide us and tell us, this is not helpful. You can't put it this way. This is not how we as Jewish people understand it. But we can't be crippled by fear to the extent of not speaking out, especially when we know that there are groups that have weaponized the charge of anti-Semitism to silence us.
Okay. We need to be on the right and the left. Now, the left. Has nothing to do with color.
Pastor Munther, as a Palestinian, as someone from Gaza, I've watched a lot of things and I've been reserved in what I've seen and thought Christianity is the same all around. But I learned from you and Pastor Alex Awad that there is, I'm not sure I'm using the right terms, I don't want to put words in your mouth. There is a different Christianity in the West than the Middle Eastern one that we grew up with and learned of what it means to follow Jesus. Something that's based on suddenly the turn the other cheek became, if you can slap the enemy as hard as you can, then God blesses you, is with you.
the love your enemy has become is the ability to have the military strength is a sign of God's blessing, and we can beat any enemy. Can you speak to that a little?
لا.
No.
I said no in Arabic. No,
He
because
wants a 1 hour lecture.
minimum to 1 hour lecture, minimum. And it took me a while to liberate myself from this. Western Christianity is also about privilege, about me. God is there to serve me and to make me a better person, a richer person, a more successful person, a more satisfied person. Whereas Jesus said, if you want to follow me, deny yourself. The exact opposite of everything that I feel American Christianity stands for. There is an obsession with, I can speak for hours, honestly. There is this obsession with violence. You have to understand, we as Palestinian Christians are by default non-violent. I can't even understand the concept of a Christian going to the military. When I came here many years ago to study, and in the church I used to go to, a Baptist church, they will receive those heroes who come back from the war in Iraq. They destroyed the heck out of Iraq, and then they welcome them as heroes and they celebrate them. I was shocked. I couldn't understand. How does a Christian go to the army? I couldn't understand it. And then I asked the pastor whose son was in the army in Iraq, why did he go to the army? He says he likes blowing things up. It's funny, but it's not. I mean, seriously. This is another thing I can't understand about West American. It's mainly American Christianity, maybe. I don't know. The obsession with race and seeing everything through, the reason I say this, Jesus, Paul in his teaching said, there is no Jew and Gentile. Let's dismantle all these walls of separation that you create, and then we come 2,000 years later, Western Christianity, and re-establish them again and make the Jew a different race, and they're not with us, they're not like us, and make them objects in our. I mean, many things, that I can speak about. But you're absolutely right. This whole thing of what does it mean? Do we take Jesus seriously? And by the way, a lot of it, you can trace it back, maybe to the Scofield Bible, to the fact of, one spirituality, the Sermon on the Mountain doesn't apply to the public square. I beg to differ. It is all about the public square. Does it matter? Did Jesus mean the stuff he said? Yes, he did. It's all these issues. So thank you.
Okay.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
I believe the church is caught up in a warp of acts of what Bonhoeffer called cheap grace. And the question becomes, how can you help the church? Because I believe Jesus, but I believe God is calling the church to the feet of fire. We need a toolkit on how to mobilize, how to get this. And in that toolkit, and this is the assignment I'm giving you, Reverend Isaac, we need this toolkit to help us to have courage to stand up and to risk not being a part of the assigned group, to risk it, because that's what Jesus did. He gave it all for us. And we don't have the courage as leaders to do the same.
Okay.
A toolkit. I think to answer just quickly, we need discipleship. We need to rediscover the true meaning of discipleship. And to our sister, you said we need a toolkit on how to mobilize. Did we forget that the civil rights movement, the African American church, taught us all how to mobilize and create? So we need your help. We need the African American voices. And by the way, I made it a priority when I came here. We need to reach to the African American churches because they understand racism. They understand how to mobilize. Where are you? We need you. I went to the Ebenezer church and I said, where are you? And I was very critical. I was very shocked before I came here. So we need you because you know how to mobilize. You know how to create grassroots movements. You understand your context better than us. And it's their interconnectivity, intersectionality, if you wish, that we need. um, people from context of oppression and marginalization, it is time we come together and stop, leaving the leadership, sorry, to be very open, to the Western white church. It's time we come together, and this is why I'm very serious. I'm now very intentional, very strategic in partnering with the South African church. We coordinate everything. We coordinate all of our message, all of our languages, which churches to reach out with. And honestly, I hope the African American church and leadership join us.
But basically, our pastor, there's no way for Israel to control 50% of its population for the last 75 years without American dollar and American support. So we need to shift to an action. What kind of action you want us to do in our congregation, in our community? What are the that's what basically, she's not talking about detail. What do you want us to do after we hear you?
I'm not American to understand exactly how. All I know is that, as I said, letters and emails no longer work. We need to disturb the empire. Sit-ins work. I've seen. We need to mobilize. We need strong faith leaders who speak out publicly, courageously, using the right language. We need to, as I said, address Zionism for what it is, the state of Israel as an apartheid state for what it is. And they can ignore me as a Palestinian voice coming here to say this. They won't ignore me next time I show up at the Hill with 100 faith leaders saying this. This is what I aim to do, by the way. So we need this kind of mobilization in which we speak as faith leaders together, in which we demand from our politicians. And also, in elections, I think it's really important. Where do you stand on Palestine? I think they need to hear from us. Before we elect congressmen or senators, where do you stand on Palestine? To be honest, your Senate from Georgia, I'm not going to name names, who was a strong Palestine friend, immediately said, I'm against BDS, I'm sending Israel weapons. You voted for him. No, next time we need to ask him, where do you stand on Palestine, or else we will not vote for you. This is what needs to happen in this country.
Tomorrow
And
at
don't
11
vote
o'clock,
for Biden.
we are having a webinar about the orphan of Gaza. So we have 20,000 orphans. We don't want to bring to America. We want to see how these 2-3 organizations are going to do after the war with the orphans. So if you are interested to be listening to that, let me know. I'll give you my card. And then Lydia have only 1 minute about what you are going to do and when. Come. Lydia is also from Gaza, and she is a leader in our Atlanta Multifaith Coalition. And
hi everyone. Thank you, Assis Munther.
بس قبل ما تخلص بدي احكي شيء بسيط عن بدي ارحب في واحدة.
And we've been talking about disrupting the empire, and it's kind of ethereal, and it's not just in Washington D.C. It's here in Atlanta. It shows up on our streets and in our daily lives, and so there's so many ways to do this, and I encourage us to be creative nonviolent resistance, as in Kairos, Palestine. But one way that Atlanta Multifaith Coalition for Palestine and many Christian and Jewish and Muslim and people of conscience have chosen to do is the Gaza ceasefire pilgrimages around the world, but right here in Atlanta, and it's meaningful right here in Atlanta. So we're in the process of planning and inviting, but really all they need to know is that July 13th, please join us on the east side Atlanta Beltline. It's a Saturday. Yeah, July 13th, Saturday, 9 a.m., and we'll meet at Old Fort Ward and continue to Piedmont Park. And it might not be, the senator's office or the Lockheed Martin, but it is a place of economic and social and cultural power that we want to show up and disrupt and call for justice through love. And so that's my invitation to all of you. And it's a good entry for a lot of the folks that we are trying to invite in to stop being silent, but to actually care and walk out the justice. It's an easy way to start being uncomfortable. Yeah.
Okay, great. Almost 2 months ago, Martha Sanders is doing right now the streaming on Facebook. Give him a big hand. Okay, but there are 3 guilty people, Martha and Emily, Reverend, she is an Episcopalian, and Lydia. They took us on a walk of 16 miles, and I'm 60 years old. So I injured my feet, okay? So right now they are coming back to their senses, like 2 miles or 3 miles. So we need to support that event. We have one more question. Can I take him and come back? Yeah. You already did your speech. Go ahead. And speak close to the mic.
So I'm Egyptian to begin with. I'm an Arab Christian, so I'm the pastor of the Arabic-speaking church here in Atlanta, and I have a lot of Palestinian brothers and sisters. So I came from your word, the same views, same ground, but let me play the devil's advocate for a second, because I get a lot of phone calls from my fellow pastors here, American pastors. How would you answer this piece of the equation about what Hamas did on October 7? They would say the attack does first, without being entangled in 75 years of history and all sorts of theology, because it won't work with with American pastors. They're product of the culture. I've been here for almost 20 years, so I'm not saying American pastors lightly. They are my friends and my brothers. But how would you answer this piece? Hamas attack on October 7th.
Wait. We need an order. He's going to answer. Take it easy.
يعني I'm going to try to be and of course I don't think any person of conscience and person of faith can approve the killing of children and kidnapping of children. Let's be clear. Hamas did horrible things on October 7th. Here's how I would say 2 more things about this. First, if you are truly appalled by what Hamas did on October 7th, yet are silent about what Israel has been doing for 76 years, you have no moral credibility. Don't speak. Shut up. Sorry. You know, you talk about the kidnapping of children. Someone once challenged me about the kidnapping of children. I said, kidnapping children is evil. Why are you silent about every year, on average, Israel kidnaps 300 children? You know what happens? We change the terminology. Arrest them. They're terrorists. No, they're not terrorists. They're children as ages 13 and 14 throwing rocks. In some cases, in most cases, no trial. They don't have a lawyer. Why are you silent? And this is what to be honest, I don't care. I tell them why they are silent, because they're racist. They don't treat people equally. That means they're racist. So if they are truly appalled about what Hamas did on October 7th and have been silent for 76 years, they have no moral credibility or integrity. Not only that, if you believe that what Israel is doing now is an appropriate response to October 7th, you have no morality or ethics whatsoever. This is my opinion. How was the killing of 15,000 children in response to October 7th? Please. So we need to stop being, as if, Hamas did horrible things, but where were you silent before October 7th? And how is this a response to October 7th? Let's be very, very clear about these 2 issues.
I have been in the U.S. for 55 years. Okay, so I came like 5 years old, okay? But basically, I want to take you to the Hebrew scripture. You remember the children of Jacob? They did not like Joseph because the father loved Joseph. So what they did, they put him in the well. You remember the story? And when they put him in the well, a caravan came and took them where? To Egypt. And that man succeeded fast. And when there hunger in Palestine, he sent the children to bring grain and other stuff. When they saw him alive and kicking, they were scared to death. You remember? What did the scripture say? You meant it for evil, but God turned it around for good. I'm in a position of power. So with all my good sermons and preaching for 55 years went down the drain, I will say with the arrogance of Israel and the U.S., they meant it for evil. What happened on October the 7th, if they use the answer for politics and dealt with the situation, it will not be going like this. So because they meant it for evil, to destroy the Palestinians for the first time in 75 years, I will say the world knows our story more than ever before. I condemn what Israel is doing. I condemn what Hamas is doing. But if we are silent of what is happening right now in Gaza, I agree with our minister. We don't have any moral equivalent to say what happened here. So we need to be straight. I don't care if we are Jews, Christian. I like us to come to humanity. When I injure my human being, something is wrong, and I need to stop. So the American young people are saying to all of us, old-timer, you are hypocrites like hell. What is happening is wrong, period. But you're going to ask question, not a speech.
Because I know if you want me to give a speech, it'll take 5 hours. Okay. Reverend Munther, I follow you, and I follow the Reverend Rahib, Mitri. I love Mitri. But we need to reach out to all people, not just to African Americans, all people. We need to reach out people with dignity and, you know, honesty, and don't pretend. I love to support women causes, Fahid knows, and students. I taught in college years before going to work at Coke. So the question is, I appeal to everyone to support our students. Support them, because they woke up. I went to graduation of my son at University of Michigan a month ago, and first thing when I got there said, take me to the encampments. I go there are 250 students. I took food for them. 50 of them at least were Jewish, against the genocide. And they said to me, it is genocide. Don't believe Sleepy Joe and senile Joe. I voted for him in 2020. I wrote to him, said, no more. You claim you're a Zionist, that means you're racist. So we need to support our students.
We need to have one question. We said 1 to 2:30, and you know I was trained in Germany, so it's 36. Go ahead. It's you. You're not going to answer.
Mine is really a follow-up to an earlier question, but I really came just to see Munther. I was a missionary in Bethlehem, and he was in our church. So, but I've been following this all very closely. But my question follow up to the pastor that asked about the dispensationalists in his church. Well, the Zionists in his church. Yes. I think isn't the real question is who is the Israel of the Bible? it's not secular Israel. And I've read Munther's books. They're excellent. But there's another one that I've read that I think is very good, and it's by a Presbyterian pastor. His name is Palmer Robinson, Palmer Robinson, and he wrote a book called The Israel of God, and it is very good.
Will you answer? You want to ask us a question? Do a question, and he will answer both of them. Okay. And yours will be the last one. Go ahead. Let's ask 2-3 questions, and you answer, because we need to promise.
Hi, I'm Episcopalian, and my experience is that the American Episcopal Church has been insufficiently supportive of Palestine and Palestinians. Why do you think that is, and how does that map to your experience? Also, how have the different denominations of the church responded differently to you in supporting this overall?
I think she served in the Senate the way she focused on her question. You do the same thing, and he will answer, and we go. Because the pastor here, he said there's no more grace.
I can be real quick with mine, because my question is really not so much for Dr. Isaac. My question is for everybody who came here. Why are you here, and what are you going to do with what you got while you're here? Because I can speak as somebody who's been on the front lines with students in demonstrations, helping to organize and doing something and speaking up. And what we are bereft of is that moral courage. The only toolkit you need to do something is to believe that it's a burning hell somewhere that you will go to if you don't do the right thing, if you have called yourself a man or woman of God.
Okay. You have 3 minutes and 3 seconds, Pastor.
I'm trying not to be emotional. I think it's not an exaggeration to say, if it wasn't for Munther, I will not be here. لأنه I attended the church he was a missionary in when I was 10 years old, and it's because of that church that I love Jesus, I love the Bible. Maybe I've went my own way theologically since then, but I never forget my upbringing. And I'm very grateful for your work in Munther. The true Israel of God, again, this is where it's important. I used to debate this theologically, covenant theology, dispensational theology, and all of that. To me, I think of the words of Jesus. If you were Abraham's children, you would be doing the works of Abraham. Let's think of this way. Let's not think of who are the people and who are not the people, who is in and who's out. Let's make it, let's challenge one another to all do the good works that God intends us to do, and let God judge us. This is how we follow Jesus, when we, stop drawing these boundaries, of who's in and who's out. That doesn't mean I don't preach Jesus. I believe Jesus is the way. I'm unashamed of that. But I stopped drawing these boundaries between people and so on. So, Episcopalians and other denominations, and I think I don't want to single out one church, but I meant what I said. Go and read the Kairos South Africa document, because I want to ask ourselves, and my main network here is another mainline denomination, the ELCA. So I don't want to sound as if we're better than. Did the church here become part of what the Kairos South Africa describes as church theology? The neutrality, the middle ground. I think the Episcopalians are known for being in the middle ground. I don't know. An Episcopalian friend told me that we're known for the middle ground. And so I think it's worth it, really. It's worth it to read the Kairos South Africa, how they described the church theology, and ask ourselves, did we become part of that theology, which is neutral, about love and peace, and says nothing, does not make an impact, does not take sides? This is my problem. Many times churches don't want to take sides. God takes sides, so let's take sides. It's not, he doesn't take sides with certain people, you know. When I said God is in solidarity with us, with the oppressed, I'm not saying there's something inherently special about Palestinians, that's why God sides with them. That's not the point at all. But God is clear in that he sides with the oppressed, with the marginalized, so his solidarity should be our solidarity. We cannot not take sides. So this is what I want to challenge the church, Episcopalian, Lutherans, Presbyterians, and it's precisely leads us to the last question. What do we do now? Unprecedented time needs, we have new ways of answering. The old ways did not work. Thank you for centering us in the end on the issue of courage. You've asked me, what do we want to do? I think once we have this shift in mind, that what we used to do did not work, and that we need to mobilize, to act, to persist, to unsettle the empire, and go where the people are moving, student movements. There are many interfaith groups that are acting. There are voices in the church that are, let's empower them, let's speak with them, let's bring them together, let's mobilize. And let's remember, the old ways did not work, so we need new ways of responding. Thank you.
Let us pray. God of justice, God of love, and God of peace, for people, for neighborhood. Thank you for this prophetic voice for Brother Munther coming to us from Bethlehem, for his message, for us as Jews, as Christians and Muslims, as people with faith or without faith, to be united against injustice. So help us as citizens in the United States of America to get in touch with our two senators, with our representative, and be active, because our policies are killing Palestinians in Gaza. So, God of mercy, help us to put hands and feet to our faith. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Before you leave, remember, we have still baklava, we still have water, we still have coffee. Shake the hands of 3 people.
And we have trash cans at the back doors, please help us out. Thank you very much.
Which one?
You're here.
Say that again.
Trash